No bias, no bull.
CNN Tonight, 8 Eastern.
I want the American people to understand that conservatism is not an ideology of feelings or romanticism, as some people like to say. It is an ideology of protecting the people and the people's rights.
Well, that was Jonathan Crone addressing the same conservative group, CPAC, that Rush Limbaugh spoke to this past weekend. He's only 14 years old. In fact, he just turned 14 on Sunday, but he's already being hailed as a conservative wonder kid after receiving a standing ovation after he did speak at the conference. And here with some advice for the Republican Party is the author of Define Conservatism, Jonathan Crone. Thanks for joining us, Jonathan. You really speak very well, and I know that you feel very, very strongly about what you believe in. You say you're a conservative first and a Republican second. How did you, first of all, even become interested in politics? And then sort of how did you find out where you stood ideologically?
Well, look, the way I got involved into politics was really because of a Democrat filibuster in the United States Senate. I started listening to conservative talk radio to hear about the history and the Senate rules, and I started learning a lot and started branching out into other areas of politics and started understanding principle as my base for the things that I did, principle as my base for the policies that I believed in, principle as my base for when I interpreted politics, and principles first. Started understanding the difference between conservative and liberal, and I really developed a very big interest in politics.
And how do you define the difference between conservative and liberal yourself?
Well, first of all, I think that in many ways there are a lot of liberals, especially in Congress these days, who, a lot of them, they have put power over politics and principle. They put power over principle in that they want government to have more interference. Government gets more power. Government gets more power. And when government gets more power, government's only going to abuse that so they can get more power. I think that that's really the liberal point of view, whereas the conservative point of view is we want to limit our lust for power. We want to limit our thrust in our belief that government should have more power to solve the problem, because we believe that government is the problem. More government is always going to be the problem. So as a conservative, I believe that it's key that we understand that. And I believe conservatives base their views entirely upon principle. And I believe in 4 categories of principle: respect for the Constitution, respect for life, less government, and personal responsibility.
I think that people would agree with you on some of that. Some would argue, though, that perhaps the reason that you're saying you're conservative first and Republican second is that many people would argue that in the past 8 years those principles were not followed in the Bush administration.
I do think so. I think especially we saw a taste of the American people starting to see that the Republican Party is not always conservative. They're not synonymous always. They saw during 2006, when the immigration bill came up, the American people went stark raving mad. They were very upset, and rightfully so, because it was not common sense. And the thing was, there were a lot of Republicans or people who said they were conservatives who were out there supporting that bill, who ended up voting against it. But I think that with the stimulus package, the American people started seeing a change of heart in the Republican Party and going back to conservative principle.
I want to ask you, because we're showing a picture right now of Rush Limbaugh, who was speaking at that conference and generated a lot of the headlines out of that conference, I guess you could say. What did you see him there, and what was the feeling and your opinion about whether or not he's the de facto leader, as many are saying, of the Republicans right now?
Well, I don't think Rush Limbaugh himself has ever said that he's the leader of the Republican Party. In fact, whenever I've heard him reference to it, he's said he is not the leader of the Republican Party. He's there to help serve conservatism and to help define conservatism and talk about conservatism and promote conservative values.
Did you get to meet him?
I did not get to meet him. But I was in the room for his speech, and, I think that he gave a good speech against government tyranny, government interference. He gave a good speech about conservative principle, and he talked about promoting them. And I think that the real important thing is that Rush Limbaugh is out there to, he's going to help Michael Steele. Michael Steele needs to do his job, and I think he is. I think Michael Steele needs to get out there and understand that he is the leader of the Republican Party, and he needs to continue to let other people help him, too.
All right, and Jonathan, if you had one bit of advice for Republicans to get more young people into the tent, how do they get more kids like you excited and engaged in the party?
Well, I think that the most important thing, they need to go back to conservative values. I know a lot of kids who say that they can't get involved in politics because they can't vote. We need to encourage kids to get involved in politics now not just tell them that they can't, but that they're not 18 yet, so they can't vote, and thereby they can't make a difference in politics. We can't promote that. That's not how we get people to get involved, and that's not going to help the Republican Party. We need to get them in now. We need to get them involved in politics, because then when they understand conservative views, they'll be able to understand the logical sense that conservatism makes and how it helps the people and the people's rights. And I think that promoting conservative views, going back to that, is key to anything that the Republican Party is going to do in the future.
All right. Did people tell you about the show Family Ties from back in the 80s?
I get that a lot.
Alex P. Keaton. I love it. All right. Well, good for you. Smart young man, homeschooled, by the way, and you've already written your own book. Well, good luck with everything. Jonathan Krohn, author of Define Conservatism. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
It's 40 minutes past the hour.